Dominic McGregor, thank you so much for hopping on today. We really, really appreciate it. How are you doing today?
Yeah, very good. It's been one of those weeks where things seem to go your way, and it's been a good week. So I'm all good today. Really good.
Oh, spot on. So I must share a story. I went to go watch a movie on Valentine's Day, a brilliant movie called What's Love Got to Do with It? And imagine my surprise when I see Lily James's character looking into her phone, and then a man pops up, and I go, I recognize this man. And then Emma Thompson's character comes in and comments on it, and that man was yourself. Could you tell me how that came about?
Yes, this has been one of my favorite stories ever, and it's probably the thing I've done in my life where I've got the most messages, because people just, it blows people's minds when they're like, they just don't expect to see it. So I have a thing for Lily James. That is very clear. That is what drove this, and my fiance knows this, and she's very understanding of that. And her best friend, one of her bridesmaids, is a producer who works in the film industry. So we were getting wound up about, oh yeah, she's working with Lily James, how jealous are you, Dom, kind of thing. And she said, okay, we've got a scene where we need Lily to flip through a dating app. I was like, so can you send us some headshots? And she got headshots from like her boyfriend, his boyfriend's friends, loads of headshots went in. And I sent mine in just as like, go on then. Thought nothing of it. And then maybe about 6 months later, the phone rings and my fiance picks up the phone and she just starts laughing. I'm like, what's gone on? What's happened? And they're literally giggling, just saying, not only have I made the film, but I'm in the trailer. And I'm like, what? So they get the video, they show me the trailer, and I'm like, this is absolutely hilarious. This is so funny. And then since then on, I've had probably 2, 3, 4 messages a week of people saying, is this you? Do they know they're using your image? And first time I was like, yeah, it's me. And then after a while, I kind of got a bit confident. I was like, oh my God, no, I had no idea. I'm going to sue them right now. A lawsuit coming in. But yeah, that's how that happened. So yeah, I threw my name into the hat for a reason, because I fancied Lily James. My fiance put me forward, and fast forward a bit later, I'm actually in the trailer, and it's a proper mugshot of me right in the face, isn't it?
It worked out all right. I even like the little grinder reference there too, just as a bit of a joke. No, it was a really, really interesting thing to see. So that's why I had to bring that up. But if I just went back and met a young Dominic McGregor and kind of said to him, just to let you know, in the future you will drop out of university. In the future you will build a company with over 700 staff and revenues hitting $200 million, and you'll sell your company at the age of 27. What would a young Dominic McGregor say to that?
I think he'd be very blasé. I think I was a very laid back individual, and I really didn't give him much thought to the future. So I really wasn't kind of like set out on an agenda, on a path, and I was very much just open to the idea. So I probably would be like, oh, that's cool. It was always something where, I just never really kind of got anxious about the future or looked at what I wanted to do. I never was kind of this person who set out to go and achieve these three things while the 30. I was just trying to kind of just living. So I don't think I'd be too bothered. I'd be kind of like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. What else am I doing? Have Liverpool in the league yet? That kind of thing.
Well, even that news, I'm sure young Dominic McGregor will be very happy about.
I'd be happy about that. Yeah. I'd be happy about that. That'd probably be more happiness. Yeah. So, I think it's a really strange one. I wasn't the kid at school selling sweets. I wasn't kind of like, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. That wasn't me. I was kind of very much living the moment, and what will be. So it's. I don't know how I'd react. I'd probably just be quite blasé.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So if we could just have, in your own words, just a quick overview. I know obviously you've had, even though you are still young, you've had quite a prolific career already. Could you just give us a quick overview of kind of your career to this point?
Yeah, I'm glad we've got this in, because I'm in 2 months' time, I'm 30, so I'm creeping towards the next milestone. So for me, as you say, went to university, dropped out. I dropped out because at the time I was running a Twitter account called Student Problems, and this was back in 2013. So this is 10 years ago now. When literally you could go on Twitter and you could get a reply from Rihanna and Stephen Fry. You could be in conversation with them. Back in like the really early days when it was like, a really like deep corner of the internet where it's like, is this going to be a thing, or is Twitter just another one of those Bebo MySpaces which is going to come and go? And what I kind of did is build a community around my life as a student, and kind of noticing things that you notice for the first time at university, like how expensive cheese is and all those kind of things that you're discovering for the first time when you're living alone. And that grew to 20,000 followers. So realized I had, I kind of, you learn, we're in the content space game, and the content game here. So you learn by doing. If you post 400 reels on Instagram, your 400 is going to be better than your first. It's just the nature of development. So it took me like 400 tweets to get to 400 followers. And I was like, what am I doing here? I'm spending all my time doing this. But then certain things started to happen, like the algorithms changed, and they started to introduce pictures to Twitter, and realized that this was going to be here to stay now. Users were growing, and it was this kind of real moment in time. That's when I met Steve, my co-founder. He was running a business called Wallpark, which is basically Gumtree for students. And it was marrying up the social media assets that I had and his kind of platform to kind of create something which was driving students to the website. And I remember the first time we did it, we pressed a link from Student Problems to Wallpark, and 300 people went like that straight to the website. And for us, that was like really impressive, because Steve had never seen more than 20 people on the website at a time. So it was like, to send that amount of traffic there in that moment, we realized that there was kind of something here. And the theory was, the more social media assets that we had, the more people we could send to the website. So I took it upon myself to build more and more social media assets, got a following of over 80 million across Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, through either acquiring channels with people who had them, or starting them myself. And that was how it was born. It was born in the sense of, we know that social media is going to be here to stay. We know that young people are using it. And thankfully, after doing it for 2 years, we could walk into a room and say, we actually are the experts when it comes to social media, because this is what we've done. And that was the biggest part of it, is because it was really authentic. There's not many industries where you can be a credible source after 2 years, and you can actually, claim to be the best at it. You imagine a doctor walking in after 2 years experience and be like, well, I'm the best at it now. It just doesn't happen. So we were very thankful that it was kind of the timing of life, and it was always going to be young people who could understand the social media landscape and sell it into big brands. So that's the role we played. And that was as I said, scale that to many people across many countries, doing a great amount of revenue. But those early days were fantastic, because we were working with challenger brands who needed to do something different. They needed to go against convention, and we spent a lot of time working with the entrepreneurs themselves to help them with their product, make their business a bit more sticky, give them a USP, because if you shout about something and people don't like the product, then they're not going to go to it. So the really early stages, we were really spent in that consultative stage, helping businesses develop. And as we scaled and we started to work with kind of big multinationals, you get further away from the work, but also you get further away from meaningful work. You working with a big FMCG brand who are in 206 countries and working with them in 2 markets, you're not going to make a big difference. So you actually become a really good operator in terms of we know how to run accounts, we know how to sell, we know how to execute, but the work lacks a little bit of purpose. So coming out of that, and after exiting, I was like, I want to go back to those times when you can really sit there, an entrepreneur. You can take an idea and execute it in a couple of days. You can have a meaningful impact on their business, and you can see the output that you have in terms of helping them. So that's kind of in the real nutshell of the kind of 360 of my own experience, in terms of what I loved was the early days of we've got these social media pages, we've got Wallpark. How the hell do we make this work? How the hell do we make this interesting? And the first 2 years of our existence was working with small challenger businesses to try and make it a success. And then when we scaled, as I say, you become more of a marketing director's resource than you do actually anything else.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I kind of want to just look a little bit more into kind of when you were building Social Chain. Obviously, when it was you and Steve, it was great. You kind of accountable to each other. But as soon as you start bringing in, more bodies to help you, how did you kind of develop your leadership style? Was there any was it just, this is how I would like to be led? Because, throwing a young person into a leadership position, some sink, some swim, and clearly it went pretty well for you. So.
No, completely not. I massively sank. The first couple of years for me was so destructive. I had no idea how to manage people. I had no idea how to deliver bad news. I had no idea how to kind of give leadership, give direction, be honest. It was all far too much for me, and it really, really impacted me. And I think that that led me to my drinking. I kind of really used alcohol as medication there, because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I had to do. I didn't know what the responsibility was of someone in a leadership position. So it was really overwhelming, and I definitely sank. And that was so clear. And I knew I had to do something about it. I remember when we hired our first person over 30. I'm turning 30 now, and I still feel ridiculously young. But I remember hiring our first person over 30, and I was 22 years old. I was like, how's this person going to respect me? Like, how do you get someone who's like, God, that much older than you? And age is, now you learn age is such a number, but then it's like a really big thing because it's like different generations. You're like, oh my God, we've got some senior staff coming in. How do you get them inspired and respect you? And I went about it completely the wrong way. My probably kind of entire basis of respect was being who can down the pipe the fastest, and that was it goes so far. But to really, when you start going from that scale up business to something more meaningful, you've got to be able to have more kind of tools in your arsenal as a leader, and I didn't have that, and I was really struggling. So the sobriety was the biggest thing that helped me there, because it gave me purpose, but also it gave me the confidence. It gives you all that kind of thing behind it, but also it gives you something that people really respect. Me going from being someone who was really struggling with drinking, really struggling with management, to actually having clear head and actually being able to make decisions and execute against things they're saying, and have the clarity in your mind of what you need to do, was phenomenal. So I definitely sank. But then you've got to, as an entrepreneur, you've got to figure it out. You've got to figure out the business, but you also got to figure out yourself. And I talk a lot about are entrepreneurs necessarily the best CEOs? How do they fit into the roles of the business scales? I was probably an entrepreneur who, when we first grew the company to 50 people, the company had outgrown me massively, and I was probably hindering it rather than helping it. And I need to do something about that. And that was had to do the development to be able to be someone who can grow the company. Thankfully, given the industry, I was always going to be very good at social media, and I always knew social media, and that was going to be what set me apart, is because I had that respect in terms of in the industry, but not in the business, and not in a leadership position. So I had to earn that, and I had to basically completely change myself to be able to get that from the team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's kind of the negative side of youth, if you will, not having that lived experience, not knowing how to necessarily lead teams. But, some would argue that starting a business at a young age is actually a good thing, because if anything, you've got, naivety on your side. Did you feel that was your experience?
Yeah, I mean, why would you get investment and put a slide in your office if you had experience? You wouldn't. So, naivety takes you so far, and it kind of allows you to build something in a vision which isn't drained by other people's perspective, and it was completely fresh. So 100% it helped us. It made us really stick out and be someone different, and was a really good leg up, But I think that naivety has to kind of at some point mature. And I think what we maybe experienced was that period of naivety being a benefit, and the need to mature just being so condensed with just rapid growth. And you're faced with no decision other than to be on the journey and change as quick as you can. And that in a lot of instances was a matter of months. You had to go from being friends with every single one in the company and having that kind of social life to actually know, we have to have separation between those relationships, and you actually then become quite isolated. And that happens so quickly, and you find yourself at 23 years old, having to give up alcohol, having to kind of remove yourself from work environments because of the professionalism. And then you find yourself quite isolated. So, 100% the naivety helps in the really early days. And I'd love to have had more time in that period where it was really beneficial being able to play in there. But, given how fast things were scaling, we had to make these difficult choices in ourselves to go with the company rather than, hang on the past.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you did sell Social Chain at the age of 27, I believe. And obviously that, as we've already mentioned, that business you started with Stephen Bartlett's. But when you decided to go your separate ways after selling the company, can you remember how you felt about that? Because, the co-founder dynamic is very, you're reliant on each other's skills. There may be things that you were missing that he had, and, vice versa. Can you remember how you felt? Were you scared, or were you kind of like, this is a new chapter, let's go?
A bit of both. I think, there was a huge part of kind of self-identity, like what are we after Social Chain? Doing something from 19 years old to 27, that's your entire life really, because before that you were in school and university. So you've got a huge piece of your identity which is attached to this. So I think the scary thing was leaving Social Chain and then going into the open world and being like, what am I going to be when I grow up? Each other, I think we always had confidence that whatever we do next will be fine. We just didn't know what we'd done. It wasn't kind of like we didn't know. All we knew was that our lives in Social Chain, and we didn't know where we fit into the outside world. So that was the most scary thing. And I think that took a lot of time to learn on. And I think I really, when you start a business at 19 years old, you know a lot less than you do at 27. And I think as you go, the world develops and you see things differently, you have different ambitions. And as I say, if you go back to 18-year-old Dom and tell him what he was going to do, he wouldn't be surprised. But that's how I was at 19. It was just take every single day at a time. And I'd never had to think about the future. And genuinely never had to think about the future. It was just social chain, and that was it. So when you have to come and then think about the future, it's quite scary. So I remember asking myself, what am I going to be when I grow up? And that was the difficult part. It's like, what am I? Who am I? And you've got to do it by yourself. You've got to find out. You've got to answer those questions of what you want to do by yourself. So I did that, and that was really, really, really powerful. I think it was the first time you get your head up for yourself, and you think about and you do all that kind of stuff. So we just knew as time got on, the way we viewed the world, the way we viewed business, and the way what we wanted to do next wasn't necessarily aligned, and nor did it need to be, because we've gone on this incredible journey together, and we'd done some great stuff, and it allowed us now to go after things we wanted to go after.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one of those things that you wanted to go after was what you kind of developed into after that was starting Fearless Adventures. Could you just tell us about Fearless Adventures and kind of your mission that you're on?
Yeah, exactly. So really came from the idea of, like, as I said there, when we scaled Social Chain, we started working with big FMCG businesses and big corporates. It was a case of, you're so far away from meaningful work that it doesn't really matter what you do. So you just become like, running a great operation rather than actually doing work which is meaningful. And I think I wanted to go back to that really kind of early stage entrepreneur, in the trenches, figuring things out where, big differences can be made from really small things. And I wanted to share that knowledge. So knew I wanted to do that. Knew I didn't want to go back into service work. Services is a horrible industry. I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. So I wanted to go into venture because I thought that was a much more better way of working with someone, because effectively, we offer services to businesses we invest in. But that basically means that you've got clients that never leave you. And a lot of things that we were struggling with businesses was the short-termism. When we were working with big PLCs, it is short-term. The churning agencies over every 2 years are expecting results immediately, and that's not how these things work. If you expect results immediately, yes. The beautiful thing about social media is you can go viral overnight. Of course you can. We see it every single day, but you can't recreate that. It is genuinely a fluke. When that happens, it's just, who would have said, okay, some corner shop in Wakefield is going to go viral because it sells Prime and the guy does a dance and sings a song. You can't manifest that. So I wanted to have a really long-term relationship. So what Fearless does now is invest in companies, but then also provide services across marketing, recruitment, tech, fulfillment, and training to help early-stage companies scale.
No, that's brilliant. And as part of this venture, you've launched the Fearless Academy, which is a fully funded course to make education free for anyone who doesn't have the means to be able to afford it. Why was this such an important part of the business that you wanted to start?
Yeah, I mean, if you came to Social Chain when there's 20 people and you looked at everyone's CVs, none of them would ever get hired, including me. We were a bunch of misfits. We were a bunch of people who, the best thing we could say on our CV at the time was we've grown our Instagram accounts to 50,000 followers, and it's a Harry Potter account, for example, or a food page. And in any kind of walk of life, they would never have gotten a chance ever. So it was always something that was really passionate for me, because I saw what happened when you put together great people, you brought together in a structure, you gave people an opportunity, and you tried to build something. So what I think the barriers to entry there at both sides, I think that young people who are very creative, say that they've got an expertise in TikTok, can't find the jobs that people have got in TikTok, so they end up going to other areas like hospitality or retail, for example. But also on the other side, big businesses won't take risks on people who don't have experience. How do you get that experience from someone who doesn't even know where to begin? So they end up deterring to hiring people. If you're looking for a TikTok videographer, do you hire someone who's got 5 years experience in video editing, or do you hire an 18-year-old who does TikTok in their bedroom? You probably hire the guy with video experience because he's got experience. So, I saw that a lot across industry where people were making decisions which were safe and less risky, and ultimately no one was there to vouch for either party to make sure that these young people found jobs. So we give people experience before they need to get experience kind of level. So If someone wants to make a change from somewhere like McDonald's or retail or manufacturing into it digital, come to the academy. We'll teach you over 12 weeks, really some of the basics, but also we'll be able to get you a place in industry with companies that want to hire and take risks on people who are new into the market. So it's one of those things where, you marry at both sides and you can get really happy relationships.
No, absolutely. It's such a great mission that you guys are on there, and it's definitely one to watch in the future. The other thing you did when you left Social Chain was that you went to university for history. Why did you decide to go down this path?
It's the soul searching piece a little bit. I always had a passion for it, and I think I studied sport at university. I got a passion for sport. I love that. And the first time I had a bit of time in my life, I had a bit of time to go after and do something I wanted to. I'd always struggled with writing. Writing was something which I was very weak at. So I thought giving some time and doing a university course might be something which improves that. So you need to have hobbies in life. People have passions and hobbies, and mine's history. And I decided to go and explore that a little bit and see where it took me. I could have gone and done a full degree in history if I wanted to. It was at Oxford, so I could have gone and done the full degree at Oxford, which would be nice just to know I could have done that. And yeah, that's one of the things. It's just a bit of time, a bit of thought, and you do things that you always wanted to do when you were too busy. And I think that's the one thing a lot of founders and people understand is that everything you want to do is going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen today because right now you're really busy. And that was just one of the things for me where it was like, I'd like to try that. So I did. Some people run marathons, they do Ironman, whatever, but that was mine.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely brilliant. And then again, kind of just coming back to your kind of style of leadership, kind of doing the research, there were a couple of occasions where you kind of mentioned that you were a bit of a yes man and you kind of, struggled with delegation a little bit when you were at Social Chain. If there's a business leader now that's going through the same experience and kind of struggling with the same issues, what advice would you have for them?
I mean, yes is the easy answer, isn't it? You put your head in the sand and you say, yes, 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 that's fine. You just want to, sometimes from my perspective, you just wanted to get rid of things, you wanted to get it just done. So my advice would be, you've got to think about the really difficult conversation. You've got to think about how you can actually get value, and your responsibility as a leader isn't there to say yes to everyone. It's actually to be the one that challenges everyone's thinking. And that's why I always didn't see is, that I kind of let, people walk all over me, but kind of, they dictate where things want to go. But I did probably not have the confidence in myself to actually set the agenda and set the direction and challenge people because of being young and naive. So I think the big part of that is, having confidence in your authority, having confidence in your vision, having confidence in what you're trying to set out. And in a lot of instances, that is no's. That is, no, this is what I think we should do, or no, you can't do that because this is the focus. And I had that discussion yesterday with someone. It's like, we've got so much low-hanging fruit in the business, like most businesses do, but we need to focus on the long term. And if you start, trying to find a shortcut, take a shortcut, and you're actually never going to get to where you want to get to. And I think that's the responsibility of leaders, is to remind people of that and make sure that everyone's focusing on the big picture.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, again, kind of coming back to your early stage of your career, you mentioned Wallpark a little bit earlier on, but, Wallpark was a venture that didn't quite work out. Essentially, it failed. What was your mindset when you suffered that early setback? Because failure is such an important part of being an entrepreneur. So I'm just interested to see, at that young age, how you kind of handled that.
Exactly like, I said about 18-year-old onward, it just carried on. It's one of those things where you don't dwell on it. And, I was in a situation where I was potentially looking at going back to university because it hadn't worked out. But it never bothered me. I always was never bothered by failure. I think I was at school, I was a goalkeeper and played football my whole life as a goalkeeper. And the number of mistakes you make, I remember a mentor of mine telling me that confidence isn't about doing something, it's about doing something you just failed at and doing it better. He was talking about coming out and catching crosses because I just dropped a cross. But he said that's where real confidence comes from. It's being able to go out there and catch the ball again. So that really stuck with me. And I think, that was something I always thought, is that, I think a beautiful thing of being failing at 19 years old is that you haven't lost anything. And I think I say to founders now, I never had to take the risks that some founders have to take when it comes to, dropping out of a comfortable life and starting a business, or, moving cities or risking stuff. I never had to risk anything because when you're 19, you're actually out at the bottom. I was getting paid £500 a month. My rent was £300. I lived off it, eating whatever I could, and I had nowhere. I couldn't go backwards really, so I could only go forward. So I think that was very comforting at 19 years old to fail that young, because you just carry on going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I like the, kind of almost water for ducks back approach that you've got. But, clearly there's been some ups and downs in your career. I mean, what would you say was the most significant challenge you faced?
Drinking, 100%. Yeah. That is without doubt. And that, obviously now we're talking about everything in retrospect. In the moment, I'm a bit more scrambly, a little bit more like, oh yeah, well, this has got to work out, or I've got to do something. But when you learn to look back on things and reflect, you actually do realize that relatively you were quite calm. But there are times when you have to have peaks and troughs. But that ultimately was a driver to make it more successful, because you have to you don't want to go backwards to university. You don't want to, some of the comments people have said to you kind of do stick with you. But the biggest challenge was drinking. It was overcoming something which was just so ingrained in culture. I remember being told at 23 that I need to stop drinking, and have been genuinely thinking, what am I going to do? What do I do in your life? What can you do? And that is it. And the horrible thing about alcohol is that it's one of those diseases and one of those problems where you've got to go through so many layers of what I call like glass ceilings. You got to go through so many glass floors where you fall and you do other things, and you make situations worse for you until you hit a genuine rock bottom where you can't fall any further, be it because you're broken or because whatever. And then you've got to just start building your way back up. And the great thing is that you can, because the glass ceilings above you now are already smashed, it's much easier to climb up than it is to go down, and you can only go up really. So that was massive. That was massive for me, and I think it was the hardest part of my life. And a lot of people, when they talk about overcoming addictions and problems, they the first thing they say is they got to get away from the stimulus and the problems that cause them. And the problems that were causing my alcohol were things like cash flow, people problems, complete imposter syndrome and what's going on in the company. And I didn't have a choice to leave those problems away. I'd put on my big boy pants and go and face them Monday morning. And it worked two ways, because yes, it was the problems, but also it was the purpose to get through it. So you replace the thing that's causing you pain, and you turn that into your purpose, and then you're actually quite a powerful individual, because you're not scared about what you face anymore, because it's already done its damage to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And alcohol is obviously something that many people outside of business too use to kind of deal with their stress. And obviously being an entrepreneur and kind of growing a company like you were at that time, how did you kind of manage the stress once you'd taken alcohol out of it? Was it something that you had to put a lot of effort into as far as kind of managing that? And what kind of tips would you have with people going through the same experience?
Yeah, I think alcohol is it's not a way of managing stress. It's a way of medicating stress. So it just numbs you. It really just helps you forget. So at first I wasn't managing it. I was literally avoiding it. I was hiding it. I buried my head in the sand. I was saying yes to too many things, and I was just like, oh my god. So and then ultimately that leads you to drink. And what was happening is you were having so many highlights with things like winning big contracts and celebrating opening new offices in different countries, and things were flying. And then you had so many downtimes when things were very difficult. And the thing about the upsides, when you're going out partying and drinking, you're not going to go and win another contract because you're drunk. It's just, that is the high, that is the ceiling. But when you're drinking and you're in a downer, you can create more problems for yourself. You don't create any benefits from drinking. It's not like, because you're drunk, suddenly you've won Amazon, Spotify are going to turn up. It doesn't work like that. But when you drink and you're in a bad place, and you got a stressful day, and then you might text someone, or you might create another problem, and these problems, that's why it's called a downward spiral, because you can only go one way. So that was it. And then when you get out the alcohol, part of the entire alcohol is rethinking your kind of stimulus response. These stimuluses still happen. You just got to respond different. You've got to actually respond to them. You can't just avoid them. You can't forget them. You've actually got to deal with them. So the way I dealt with stress after that was, probably becoming really a high functioning individual, where it's like, okay, I need to get all these things done, and then I can go home and relax. And that relaxing isn't drinking. It's just knowing that things are done, and that I've not got these anxieties anymore. So it was a really contrasting shift where, to get myself well and to remove my anxieties, I had to deal with my problems. And that was what happened. And then, the company went for a real purple patch after that. And I think it was a case of, things were just getting done then. And instead of, leaving, having a drink at the office with friends at 4 and then going home and drinking some more and avoiding the problems, I just started to deal with them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, kind of sticking on that purple patch that you had with Social Chain, I mean, when you think about kind of the time in history that you and Steve started this venture, it was almost a perfect time where, like you said, like there weren't too many social media professionals as per se. You guys definitely kind of smashed that market at the perfect time. If it was 10 years before and, you were that age, do you feel like your entrepreneurial spirit would have put you through kind of in a different venture, or do you think it was a case of making the most of the right place, right time?
I think university is beautiful because university is the one time in life where someone's paying to do nothing. So, would I have got bored at university 10 years ago and found myself doing something else? Probably would have, yeah. I had so much time, energy, trying stuff, so I probably would have done something else. So yeah, that definitely do think it. But like you say, social media, we were perfectly well timed. We were in a situation where this thing was new, it was scaling, and it needed young people who understood it to be able to translate it to traditional marketing. So yeah, timing these things is everything. 2 years earlier, would it work? No. 2 years later, too late. So being in the right place at the right time in business is so important, and I think that's something we got very fortunate. And then you're pushing on open doors, and you're riding waves in a way where people want social media. The market's naturally growing. If you look at the data from 2013 to 2018 in terms of how much spend went into from social media, of course any business that was in that place at that time was going to grow quickly because the market was rapid. So of course, timing is a huge part of it. 10 years ago, if I'm at university now, what am I doing if I'm at university right now? I'm literally spending my time figuring out where the next frontier is. I'm definitely not spending my time trying to build a student problems Twitter account. I'm probably doing something a little bit different. But of course, the energy's there and the opportunity's there. And I think what we've seen with the internet is maybe that the opportunities are becoming more common for people, and that access to information is much, much quicker. And I think we were probably the last generation of people who were still pre-connectivity, really, genuine, real connectivity of like, I can tweet someone in San Francisco and they will reply to me. I think we're now much more connected, so there's much more opportunity than even when I was at university.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And another thing you've done, which again, just add to your impressive CV, was you've done some work with the government, helping with its social media strategy. How did this experience, what was it like, and how did it come about?
Again, so after leaving social media, we had a period of kind of like, non-compete. So I couldn't go back into the industry. I couldn't go and work for, I didn't know what I was going to do. So again, an area I was interested in. I think during COVID, politics had a real light shine on it, and I think we're seeing that at the moment with some of the stuff that's coming out. But there was generally was a message about social media about being really passionate. So for me, I was kind of really interested in that. So ran towards it, did some advisory work, knew some people in governments. That was really interesting, and that was something I wanted to do.
Was it quite enlightening as far as the experience goes? Was there anything you kind of learned that you were kind of shocked about, or anything you were like, oh, actually they're doing this pretty well?
No, nothing.
I completely understand. Yeah. We'll move on. So obviously, with your current venture and kind of on the VC side of things, fundraising is something that's so important to all of our, audience. So, what tips would you have for, kind of entrepreneurs going through the fundraising process, especially in a quite turbulent, financial climate we find ourselves in?
It's, the climate we find ourselves in is not that's where opportunities come from. It's a difficult one to look at, because if you right now, you don't want to be big. You don't want to be highly leveraged with debt. You want to be small. So, right now I think it's the perfect time for opportunities to come. And, we didn't raise money for the first 2 years. We figured out something. We kind of really focused on it. And that was what we did. So I think my advice now is focus on value. Yes, we live in a world where you get a Series A, doesn't mean you're going to get your Series B or your Series C. You're not going to go take it through that process as quick as possible. You actually have to deliver. It sounds crazy. You're not your success isn't determined by how much money you raise, which previously might have been the case. and we're not in a situation with tons of capital flowing into the market. But if you've got a good, valuable business and you've got a sustainable business that is generating good cash flow and profit, you'll always find options. So I focus on those basic principles. At Fearless, we're trying to back profitable companies. Simple as that. If you can build a profitable company, not have to depend on raising external capital to fund yourself. Obviously, every business model is different, but you can build something even more powerful in a year's time to go out there to the market and be like, actually, we figured out profitability in this tech space. This is how we're scaling. And I've got some great friends who've done that. They run a business called Favour, if you've seen that. It's one of the Spanish unicorns. They were a social chain client, came to us really early 2015. And then they just went away, slowly built. And then they did their first round, which was 110 million from Goldman Sachs, because they figured out profitability. So let's not confuse raising money with success, but it makes it much easier to raise money if you've got a fundamental model which works. And I think maybe we've been speculating too much in the VC market.
And I'm sure you've had plenty of people coming to you looking for that kind of raising funds. Have you ever just said to someone, look, if I were you, I just wouldn't even bother. Like, you've got a good thing going, like, don't bother.
Yes. But don't bother raising money, or don't bother the business?
Don't bother raising money.
I've done both. I saw a business who spent 80,000 trying to 8K revenue. I was like, nah, give up.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
The model's not there. It was subscription fragrance shop. I was like, nah, market's not there for you, mate.
Yeah.
Like, no, if I raise $1 million, I can get 100K revenue, and then the subscription. It's like, nah.
Yeah.
Nah, it's not. It's easier to get your first date than it is to get your next 100. So have I seen people? Yeah, have I told people not to raise money? Look, there's reasons why you may raise money. Look, you can throw fuel to the fire and continue to accelerate things quicker. If you've got a model which works, that does work. You got to ask yourself the question: is equity cheaper than debt, or is debt cheaper than equity? If you can handle cash, then you might as well look at a debt option, because 7%, whatever, 8% fees is highly expensive, but it's probably cheaper than giving away your equity. But then you've got to ask yourself, why am I raising money? Do I want people around me that are going to help me? Then it's a very different conversation, and looking for strategic partners is very different than just taking cash. So that's what you draw in that situation, is why do you want money? Why do you need the money? And if the question is support, strategic advice, these four reasons why I think we're a good partner, then it's very different than, you give me another 5 million, I'll do this. It's like, no, just go and get 5 million elsewhere, because you can do it because you've proven it already.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's time for a really special segment. We've teamed up with the Jill Dando News Centre to bring you the Good News Postcard. Your question today comes from Kieran, aged 14.
Hi, I'm Kieran from the Jill Dando News team based in World Community School, and I would like to ask what the defining moment of your company was. That's
a very good question, Kieran. There's two moments that really stick out for defining moments. The first one being, and I remember the date, it was 2nd of June, 2015. And we just delivered projects for Universal McCann, 20th Century Fox, Comedy Central, some other big brands. And all three of them paid on one day. And we were like, oh my goodness, this is crazy amounts. And I remember where I was in our office in Hammersmith. I was jumping around celebrating, this is incredible. So that was one day. That was a real defining moment. And I think the other one was, again, another project which we delivered, which again stretched our capabilities. But it was the first time we really moved into proper strategic execution of a campaign and idea we created for Coca-Cola. So the idea was basically, how do we get more millennials at the time? That's how long ago it was. Gen Z millennials drinking Diet Coke because Diet Coke drinks had declined. And then we put a strategic proposal to them, and they said, yeah, we're going to do this. And that was just a complete elevation of our work, where we went from being kind of a delivery partner to actually being a strategic partner. And that was a big step up for us.
That is a brilliant question and a fantastic answer. So thank you so much for that, Dom. And obviously we are business leaders. So what would you say makes a great business leader?
Humility and resilience. Simple as that.
Short and sweet. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And do you have any final words for our audience today?
No, I just thank you for having me on. It's always a real pleasure to appreciate that people actually want to sit and listen to this story. So no, I've really enjoyed it. It's been very, very useful. Kieran asked a great question. And just thank you.
No, thank you so much for your time. Again, your honesty, especially around your sobriety and kind of being very, very open with us is greatly appreciated. And, if people wanted to follow your journey, how would they follow you on social media, etc.?
Yeah, so Twitter at Dominic McGregor, Instagram at DPJ McGregor, or LinkedIn. So I check my messages most weeks. So if everyone ever drops me a message, I'm always keen to respond as well.